The smell arrives before anything else. Fresh coffee drifts through an open window somewhere above the street. It mingles with the faint sweetness of yesterday's rain still resting on old brick and worn stone. The air is soft, warm already, not yet hot. Morning light slips between the buildings and settles across the narrow streets. Of the French Quarter, long shadows stretch across the pavement. Iron balconies hang overhead, delicate and dark against the pale sky. For a moment, the neighborhood feels half asleep. A lone delivery truck rattles somewhere in the distance. A door opens, then closes again. Footsteps echo briefly along the sidewalk before disappearing around a corner. Even the sounds seem careful this early. We begin walking slowly. The city beyond the quarter is already stirring, but here the day arrives at its own pace. The streets are older than almost anything around them. Some of these buildings have watched generations pass beneath their windows. The scent of baking bread drifts from a nearby shop. A cat rests on a doorstep, perfectly content. Potted plants catch the morning sun. Laundry sways gently from a hidden courtyard where voices murmur beyond the walls. Nothing feels rushed. You can almost believe the clock moves differently here. As we wander farther down the street, shutters open one by one. The neighborhood stretches. Awake, light gathers in the corners of small squares and quiet courtyards. The sky brightens overhead, and for a few peaceful moments, before the crowds arrive and before the day finds its rhythm, the French Quarter belongs to the morning. It is calm, it is familiar. And it feels like a place that has always been here. The morning grows brighter with every step. A newspaper lands on a doorstep with a soft thud. Somewhere nearby, dishes clink behind an open kitchen window. The scent of coffee lingers in the air as another day quietly unfolds around us. And today, you and I are going to live this entire day together. We will follow these streets from the first light of morning all the way to nightfall. We will watch shopkeepers unlock their doors. We will hear the sounds of Main Street at its busiest. We will see families return home as the afternoon fades. And when darkness arrives, we will walk beneath the glow of neon signs and listen to the city settle into the night. For now though, the day is still young. The year is 1962. A small fact, easy to miss. More than a century has already passed since many of these French Quarter buildings first appeared. They have become such a natural part of the landscape that people rarely stop to think about their age. That is often how places become part of us. We stop noticing them because they always seem certain to remain. But as we move through this day together, another story quietly follows us. Change is already beginning, not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough to alter the future in ways few people can yet see. The streets around us still feel timeless. Yet this particular version of the quarter will not last forever. We will come back to that before our walk is done. If you enjoy walking back into these forgotten times, consider subscribing to The Way We Were so you don't miss the next journey. For now, the city is waking. The sun is climbing higher, and an ordinary day in the French Quarter is about to begin. Morning settles fully across the French Quarter. The sunlight now reaches the street below, warming the old brick and stone. Shadows retreat beneath balconies draped with plants. The air carries the smell of coffee, fresh bread, and the faint trace of river water drifting in from beyond the neighborhood. The city is awake. A shopkeeper unlocks a wooden door and props it open. Across the street, another sweeps yesterday's dust from the sidewalk. The rhythmic scrape of the broom becomes part of the morning soundtrack. Nearby, a delivery driver carries boxes through a side entrance while exchanging a few familiar words with someone inside. Nobody seems hurried. People move with the confidence of routine. They know where they are going. They know who they will see. They know what the day usually brings. We continue down the narrow streets. Window shutters stand open now. Courtyards hidden behind gates reveal fountains, flowers, and patches of sunlight. Voices drift from second-floor apartments. A radio plays somewhere in the distance, its music floating gently through the warm air before fading again. The French Quarter feels less like a neighborhood and more like a collection of small daily rituals. A woman waters plants from a balcony above. A man pauses outside to greet a friend. Someone carries groceries home in a paper bag folded neatly at the top. The details are simple. That is exactly what makes them memorable. One small fact follows us through the morning. In 1962, many residents still walked to nearby shops and businesses rather than drive. The streets were designed long before Automobiles arrived, and daily life often unfolds just a few blocks from home. You can feel that closeness everywhere. People recognize one another. Conversations begin without appointments. A quick stop on the sidewalk can turn into 15 minutes of catching up. As the sun climbs higher, more visitors begin appearing. Some carry cameras. Others unfold maps and glance up at the balconies overhead. The quarter has already become a place people travel to see, though it still feels very much lived in. That balance gives the neighborhood its character. It is not a museum. It is not a stage set. Real life continues behind every doorway. A truck rattles over the uneven pavement. Church bells ring somewhere beyond the rooftops. The sound lingers in the air for a moment before dissolving into the growing hum of the city. We pass a small grocery. Fresh produce sits near the entrance. Customers step inside, exchange greetings, and disappear into the cool shade, a few doors. Farther along, the smell of baking pastries drifts onto the street. Even if you have no intention of stopping, it is difficult not to slow down. The morning invites you to linger, and so we do. The quarter reveals itself best when nobody rushes through it. A pair of children race across a small square before being called back by a parent. Their laughter echoes between the old buildings. A dog barks once from behind a fence. Somewhere nearby, dishes clatter as another restaurant prepares for the lunch crowd that will soon arrive. The neighborhood is gathering momentum, yet it still holds. Onto the softness of morning. If you grew up in an era like this, you remember these sounds, not one sound by itself, all of them together. The distant radio, the screen door closing, the broom on the sidewalk, the voices carried through an open window. The soundtrack of an ordinary day, and ordinary days are often the ones we miss most. The sunlight is stronger now. The streets are busier. More doors are open than closed. The city has fully stepped into the day. Ahead of us, the pace is changing. By noon, the street has changed, and the heart of the quarter is coming alive by noon. The street has changed. The gentle quiet of morning has given way to movement. Sunlight pours straight down now, turning the old walls bright and warm. The air feels heavier. Conversations overlap. Doors swing open and closed. Footsteps fill the sidewalks. The French Quarter is fully alive. A street musician leans against a corner building and begins to play. The notes drift through the crowd and bounce softly between the narrow streets. People slow down without realizing it. Some stop for a moment. Others simply carry the music with them as they continue walking. The neighborhood seems to breathe a little faster now. Restaurant windows glow in the midday light. Menus stand outside doorways. The smell of seafood, spices, fresh bread, and coffee mixes together into something unmistakably New Orleans. You do not have to see the kitchen to know lunch is being prepared. You can smell it from halfway down the block. A waiter carries trays through a crowded dining room. Nearby, a family studies a map while standing in the shade of a balcony. A local shop owner chats comfortably with customers who have been stopping by for years. Everyone shares the same streets, visitors, workers, residents. For a few hours, they all become part of the same scene. One small fact quietly sits beneath the surface of this busy afternoon. In 1962, many businesses in the quarter are still family-run operations, often passed between generations. The person greeting customers may have grown up helping behind that very counter. You can feel that history without anyone explaining it. The buildings are old. The businesses are familiar. The faces are known. There is comfort in that. We continue walking. The sidewalks are narrow enough that strangers sometimes step aside for one another. A brief smile, a polite nod. Then everyone continues on their way. Small moments. Easy to overlook, yet they shape the feeling of a place. A delivery truck arrives outside a restaurant. Workers unload crates while exchanging jokes. Across the street, a barber sweeps hair from the floor near his doorway. A customer leaves looking much the same as when he arrived, except somehow lighter. That was often enough. The midday heat settles over everything. Ceiling fans spin inside. Open windows invite whatever breeze can be found. People linger in shaded courtyards where fountains offer a little relief from the warmth. The sound of water becomes its own kind of music. Somewhere nearby, church bells ring again. For a moment, the crowd seems to pause. Then the movement resumes. Lunch tables fill, cash registers ring, ice clinks inside tall glasses. The city continues its conversation. If you stand still long enough, you begin noticing the layers. The tourists looking up, the residents looking ahead. The workers moving quickly because they have somewhere to be. Every street contains several different stories at once. That is part of the magic. Nothing here feels arranged for visitors. Life simply happens, and we are fortunate enough to witness it. A young couple emerges from a small shop carrying a package wrapped neatly in brown paper. An older man sits outside reading the newspaper. He turns the page slowly, unconcerned with the pace around him. The world feels larger in 1962. News arrives more slowly. Messages take longer. People spend more time looking at one another than looking at screens. There is space between moments, and in that space, life unfolds. The afternoon sun glitters against windows and balcony railings. A breeze finally arrives from the direction of the river, carrying cooler air through the streets. People seem grateful for it. The quarter continues humming, busy but never frantic, lively but never rushed. If you remember places like this, you remember the feeling. Not the exact buildings, not the exact businesses. The feeling, a place where familiar faces appear unexpectedly, a place where errands turn into conversations, a place where the day seems to belong to everyone. The lunch crowd slowly begins to thin. Shadows start stretching again across the pavement. The brightest part of the day is passing, and as the afternoon settles in, attention turns toward home, work, and the small moments that make a life. The afternoon arrives gently. The sunlight softens. Shadows begin returning to the streets they abandoned earlier. The heat still lingers, but the day no longer feels as intense. The French Quarter settles into a different rhythm. The lunch rush has passed. The sidewalks remain busy, though the movement feels calmer now. Store owners stand in doorways for a moment of rest. Restaurant workers prepare for the evening crowd that will arrive later. Deliveries become less frequent. Conversations become a little longer. The day seems to exhale. We turn down a quieter street where daily life feels closer and more personal. Away from the busiest corners, the quarter reveals another side of itself, a side built around ordinary routines. Laundry sways gently between buildings. A bicycle leans against a brick wall. An open window releases the smell of supper beginning early in someone's kitchen. These small details tell us as much as any landmark ever could. They remind us that people live here. Behind every shuttered window and courtyard gate, a life is unfolding. One small fact follows us into the afternoon. In the early 1960s, many homes in the French Quarter still rely on open windows and ceiling fans to battle the summer heat. Air conditioning exists, but it has not yet transformed daily life the way it will in the decades ahead. You can almost feel that reality around us. Windows stay open. Voices travel. Neighbors remain connected to the sounds of the street. The boundary between public and private feels softer. We continue walking. A repairman loads tools into the back of a truck. A clerk carries a stack of boxes into a small store. Across the street, someone pauses on a balcony to watch the neighborhood below. Nobody appears to be in a hurry to leave the day behind. The afternoon has its own kind of comfort. The urgency of morning is gone. The excitement of evening has not yet arrived. What remains is something quieter, something easier. We pass a corner grocery where customers come and go carrying paper sacks. Inside, familiar faces exchange familiar greetings. A customer asks about a neighbor. The owner asks about someone's children. The transaction matters. The conversation matters too, perhaps even more. A few blocks away, we catch a glimpse of an ordinary family. Moment, nothing dramatic, nothing remarkable. The kind of scene that rarely appears in photographs because nobody thinks to capture it. A father returns home from work. A child races toward him before he even reaches the front steps. A mother appears at the doorway smiling. For a few seconds, the entire world seems to narrow to that single reunion. Then life continues. The groceries come inside. The door closes. The moment passes. Yet somehow those are the moments that remain with us. Years later, people rarely remember a random Tuesday because of what happened downtown. They remember who was waiting at home. If you grew up in this era, you remember this feeling, the sound of someone arriving, the screen door opening. The excitement of seeing a familiar face at the end of the day. Simple things, important things. The sunlight grows warmer now, turning gold around the edges. The old buildings seem softer in this light. Courtyards glow. Iron railings catch the sun. Long shadows stretch across the pavement. The city feels almost reflective, as though it knows the day is beginning to wind down. Children play for a little longer before supper. Neighbors talk from porches and balconies. Radios continue playing through open windows. A baseball game can be heard somewhere in the distance. Not clearly, just enough. The sound drifts through the air like a memory already forming. A dog naps beneath a shaded staircase. A newspaper rests folded beside a chair. Someone waters flowers that have spent the entire day under the Louisiana sun. Nothing extraordinary happens, and that is exactly why it feels meaningful. Most of life is built from afternoons like this. Quiet hours, small routines, familiar faces. The pieces that seem ordinary while we are living them. The pieces we miss once they are gone. The sky slowly begins changing color. The brightest light fades. Storefront windows reflect the afternoon sun one last time. Evening is approaching, and with it comes an entirely different French Quarter. One of glowing signs, music drifting through open doors, and streets that seem to come alive all over again. Evening arrives like a slow curtain lowering across the city. The sun slips behind the rooftops and the French Quarter changes once again. The heat of the day begins to ease. Shadows merge together. Streetlights flicker to life one by one. A golden glow settles over the old streets. For a few moments, day and night exist together. The last traces of sunlight rest on balcony railings while electric lights begin shining through restaurant windows. The neighborhood seems suspended between two worlds, then darkness gently takes over. The sounds change first. The steady rhythm of daytime business fades into something looser and more musical. Laughter drifts from open doorways. Glasses clink. Conversations rise and fall like waves. Somewhere nearby, a trumpet begins to play. The notes float through the warm evening air. You can hear them long before you see their source. We continue walking beneath balconies that now appear almost theatrical in the glow of street lamps. Plants spill over iron railings. Window lights shine softly above us. The streets feel smaller at night, more intimate. The Quarter draws people closer together after sunset. One small fact belongs to this hour. In 1962, live. Music remains one of the defining sounds of New Orleans nightlife, with local performers filling clubs and venues throughout the city almost every evening. You do not need a calendar to know it, you can hear it. Music seems woven into the streets themselves. A couple strolls hand in hand beneath the lights. A group of friends pauses outside a restaurant, reluctant to end their conversation. Visitors wander slowly, taking in sights that look completely different from how they appeared just a few hours earlier. Night transforms familiar places. The same buildings stand where they always have, yet they somehow feel new. Restaurant dining rooms glow with warmth. Waiters move between tables carrying plates that fill the air with inviting aromas. Laughter spills onto the sidewalks, through open windows. Ceiling fans continue their steady rotation overhead. Inside and outside blend together. The city feels connected, alive, comfortable in its own skin. We pass a small gathering of people listening to musicians on a nearby corner. Nobody seems concerned about time. Nobody appears eager to leave. The evening invites people to stay a while, and many do. The pace of life feels different here. Slower, more human. A man leans back in his chair outside a. Nearby, an older couple shares a quiet conversation. They have likely done this hundreds of times before. Perhaps that is why it feels so beautiful. Not because it is rare, because it is familiar. If you grew up around places like this, you remember the glow, the yellow streetlights, the neon signs, the feeling that the day was ending, but not quite yet. The feeling that there was still time. Music drifts through another doorway, then another. Different melodies overlap as we move through the streets. Some sounds fade behind us, others emerge ahead. Together they create a soundtrack unique to this place. The French Quarter after dark is not silent, it sings. The night deepens. Storefronts begin closing. Some workers head home. Others are just beginning their shifts. The city hands itself from one group to another. That exchange happens every evening. Most people never notice it, yet it keeps the rhythm of the neighborhood alive. The sky above is now completely dark. A few stars peek through where the city lights allow them. The streets glow beneath lamps and neon. Reflections shimmer in puddles left from an afternoon shower. The Quarter feels timeless, as though this night could belong to 1962 or 1952 or decades before that. And yet, without anyone realizing it, change is already moving toward these streets, quietly, patiently, waiting just beyond the edge of the light. The day is nearly complete, but before we leave this place behind, there is one more story to tell. The story of how a world like this slowly began to fade. The changes do not arrive all at once. There is no single day when people wake up and realize an era has ended. Instead, it happens quietly, almost politely. One year blends into the next. Familiar storefronts change hands. A family business closes after decades of serving the neighborhood. A young person leaves for opportunities elsewhere and never quite returns. A building that once held a grocery becomes something different. The streets remain, but the rhythm begins to shift across America, the decades ahead bring new highways, larger suburbs, and shopping centers far from the old downtown districts. More people drive, fewer people walk everywhere they need to go. Life becomes faster, more connected in some ways, less connected in others. The French Quarter survives these changes better than many places. Its beauty, history, and character continue drawing visitors from around the world. Yet even here, something subtle begins to change. The neighborhood we have spent the day walking through is still a living community. Children play nearby, neighbors recognize one another. Store owners know their customers by name. As the years pass, some of those everyday connections become harder to find, not because anyone chooses to lose them, because the world around them changes. The old routines that once held communities together begin to loosen. A quick walk to the corner store becomes a drive across town. A conversation on the sidewalk becomes something postponed for another day. The ordinary moments become a little less ordinary because they happen less often. And that may be the saddest part, most ways of life do not disappear in dramatic fashion. They simply become memories, a favorite shop, a familiar neighbor, a daily routine nobody thought to appreciate because it seemed permanent. The people living here in 1962 cannot yet see the full shape of what is coming. Neither can most Americans. They are busy living their lives, working, raising families, meeting friends, listening to music on warm evenings, doing all the things people have always done. And perhaps that is why this day feels so precious now, because we know what they cannot. We know that even the most familiar world eventually changes. And we know how much those ordinary moments will one day be missed. Maybe you remember a street like this. Perhaps it was not in New Orleans. Perhaps it was not even in the South. But somewhere in your memory there may be a place that feels familiar. A place where people knew one another. A place where daily life unfolded at a slower pace. A place that seemed so permanent that nobody imagined it could ever change. Most of us carry a place like that, a neighborhood. A small town, a corner store, a street where summer evenings felt endless. The details are different for everyone, but the feeling is often the same. It is the feeling of belonging. As we look back on this day in the French Quarter, what stays with us is not a famous landmark or a historical event. It is the ordinary texture of life. The sound of a broom on the sidewalk. The smell of coffee drifting through an open window. The familiar greeting exchanged between neighbors. The child running toward a parent at the end of the day. Small moments, yet somehow they become the foundation of memory. Years later, we rarely miss schedules or routines. We miss how places felt. We miss the sounds, the faces, the atmosphere. The quiet certainty that tomorrow would look much like today. And maybe that is why journeys like this matter. They remind us that history is not only found in major events. History is also found in ordinary afternoons and familiar streets, in conversations that lasted a few minutes, in routines repeated thousands of times, in places that helped shape the people who passed through them. Maybe, as we walk through this day together, you are not only remembering the French Quarter of 1962, maybe you are remembering a small piece of your own story too. The streets are quieting now. The music grows softer in the distance. The last conversations linger beneath the glow of streetlights, somewhere beyond the rooftops. Another day is ending. Our walk is complete. We arrived with the first light of morning. We followed the neighborhood through its busiest hours. We watched ordinary lives unfold. And together, we witnessed a version of the French Quarter that still lives on in memory. Some places don't survive, but they're never really gone. They remain in photographs, in family stories, in familiar sounds that suddenly return years later, and in walks like this, where we can visit them once again, if only for a little while. Thank you for spending the day here with me. If this brought back a memory, leave a comment and share what it reminded you of. And if you enjoy walking through these forgotten times, subscribe to The Way We Were so you can join me on the next journey. Every memory shared helps keep these places alive. Until next time, take one last look down the street, listen to the fading music, and hold on to the feeling for a moment longer. Which place should we walk through next?